Hi everyone, my name is Kennedy, and I'm going to talk to you about my article today, which was called Mood Disorders in Childhood and Adolescence. So the reason that I chose this article in specific is for a couple of different reasons. For one, it's a little bit near to my heart because I actually did have a mood disorder as a child. Another one is because an argument does exist that children should not be diagnosed with mood disorders. And I basically want to say that I think that that is not helpful. I think that early intervention is important with all types of mental health issues. And the sooner that you're able to get a child learning skills to deal with their mood disorders, the better I think everything will kind of result in the future. So just to get you started, I'll let you know specifically this article looks at depression and bipolar in children. So I'll get you started off with the depression portion. So most people report that depression does start for them in childhood, even adults who report. And it's very serious because it can lead to suicide for children, and it has. So after a depressive episode, there's actually a 70% chance that it will happen again for a person within the next 5 years. So, in other words, only 30% of people who experience depression will have like a one-time depression that they're able to just completely move past. Children with depression typically have very high levels of comorbidity with other disorders. So this means that they have other disorders at the same time, which means that diagnosing can be complicated for depression because having the other disorders, a psychiatrist would have to be able to distinguish between which symptoms are depression symptoms and which other symptoms in order to verify that they do have depression. So diagnosis of it in children is also really difficult because it shows up differently than it does in adults. So the way that adults might be able to explain to somebody that they're feeling depressed and the things that they're going through, children don't usually have the same capacity to explain those types of emotions. So it may be that people look or watch their sleeping patterns, moodiness, things like that, might give you a little more insight into it for children. As far as therapy and treatment goes, they need to be chosen very carefully because you need to make sure that the child that's being given the therapy has the capacity to understand it. So it does need to be brought down to a level that works for the child's age and maturity level, and depending on their cognitive skills as well. As well, for mild cases, therapy may be enough to actually treat depression all on its own. Typically, what's used for children is either CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's a therapy that basically looks at changing emotions, thoughts, and behaviors that all kind of play off of each other. And then there's also interpersonal therapy, so that would be considered more of like your standard talk therapy. So yeah, with mild symptoms, you can sometimes treat depression in children with just therapy. With more severe situations and symptoms, they may need to add a medication as well. All right, so moving on to bipolar. So bipolar reports from adults also report the onset in late childhood as well as early adolescence. It's a lot less likely for it to happen to children. It's much more common that it sets in later on in adolescence. So, when diagnosed, only about 20% of people report the symptoms stopping completely. So in other words, most people that do get diagnosed with bipolar correctly do have it for their entire lives. Wrong part. There's no test that can be taken to determine if someone does have bipolar. No scientific test that checks positive or negative. So for that reason, determination of whether or not you have bipolar is based on the symptoms that you show only, and symptom analysis. Treatment for children with bipolar is complicated as medication is usually always needed, as well as the environment of the child does need to be addressed. Often as bipolar disorder is something that's very disruptive in the life pattern. So if the environment, as well as parenting, etc., is not looked at, the child may continue to worsen or their symptoms may not be worked on. CBT is also used for this, so that's that cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as education to family members of the child so that they can understand what's going on and how to react best. Um, that's generally what I have for this article. I think it was a really good article based on the fact it was peer reviewed, so that did show me that it is both trustworthy and credible. Um, and I really like that it does demonstrate that both depression and bipolar can exist within children. I think that a lot of things neglect to admit that. Um, and I think that, as I was kind of saying before, I think it's a very good thing for them to be able to label children with these disorders as early as possible so that they do actually have a chance at getting rid of it. Finally, I think this is a very good and to the point article, and it explains really well what we do know about depression and bipolar for children thus far. And that's the end of my video. Thank you for watching. Bye.